The invasion and the spark of resistance. The sky turned copper on the day they came. Not gradually, like a sunset, but instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Traffic stopped. Phones died. Power grids failed worldwide. Then the silence came, heavy and oppressive, broken only by the low hum that vibrated through every building and every bone. They called themselves the Krell. Their ships appeared without warning, massive structures that eclipsed entire cities beneath their shadow. Humanity's first and only formal contact with them lasted exactly 17 seconds, just long enough for the alien commander to announce in perfect English, "Your world is now property of the Krell Empire. Resistance is inefficient." What followed was not a war, but a culling. Major cities around the globe erupted in blue fire as precision strikes eliminated government centers, military bases, and communications hubs. New York, Moscow, Beijing, London, all reduced to smoldering craters within the first hour. The organized military response lasted less than a day. Fighter jets exploded mid-air before they could even approach the alien vessels. Nuclear missiles launched in desperation were simply swallowed by shimmering barriers that surrounded the Krell ships. By the end of the first week, 2 billion people were dead. Civilization as humanity knew it had collapsed. The survivors scattered into the countryside, hiding in mountains, forests, and underground shelters as the Krell methodically established their dominion over Earth. Maya Chen watched it all unfold from the basement of an abandoned library in what used to be Chicago. A former military strategist with the Joint Special Operations Command, she had been on leave visiting her parents when the invasion began. They hadn't survived the initial strike. Now, she sat hunched over a makeshift radio, scanning frequencies for any sign of organized resistance. Anything? Eli Novik looked up from the table where he was tinkering with salvaged components. The engineer had been working in Chicago's power grid modernization project before the invasion. His technical knowledge had kept their small group of survivors powered and hidden for nearly a month. Nothing coherent, Maya replied, adjusting the dial. Same as yesterday. Scattered distress calls, some in Spanish, something in what might be Russian. Nobody's coordinating. Thorne, their youngest member and former communications specialist for a private security firm, entered the room carrying scavenged supplies. Patrols passed, he announced, dropping his backpack. But they're changing patterns. 3 drones instead of 2. They're expanding their search grid. Maya nodded grimly. They're learning, adapting to us. The 3 had formed the core of their group, 27 people from different backgrounds, united only by their refusal to accept extinction. While most survivors focused solely on hiding, Maya had insisted they study the enemy, document patterns, find weaknesses. It was a seemingly hopeless endeavor until Eli made his discovery. "I think I've got something," he said, beckoning the others to his workspace. On the table lay a partially disassembled drone they had managed to disable during a risky mission the previous week. "Look at these components. The Krell use a completely different operating system than anything I've seen, but there's something familiar about their communication array." "Familiar how?" Thorne leaned closer. "It's designed to filter specific electromagnetic frequencies, almost like..." Eli paused, struggling to find the right words. "Like they're allergic to certain wavelengths. I've been running tests, and every time I hit this particular range..." He pointed to his notes. "The system goes haywire." Maya's eyes widened. "A weakness." "Potentially," Eli cautioned. "But if I could build a device that broadcasts at exactly this frequency with enough power, you could disrupt their systems." Thorne finished, excitement building in his voice. "Not just their systems," Eli corrected. "Based on how integrated their tech seems to be, we might be able to disrupt the Krell themselves." That night, their resistance cell found its purpose. Maya drew on her military experience to develop strategy while Eli and Thorne focused on creating what they came to call the disruptor. For weeks, they worked relentlessly, scavenging parts from abandoned electronics stores and raiding Krell outposts for alien technology. Their first prototype was the size of a microwave oven, crudely assembled but functional according to Ely's calculations. Testing it required taking an extraordinary risk. They would have to deliberately attract Krell attention. "Ready?" Maya asked, her hand hovering over the activation switch. They had positioned themselves in an abandoned shopping mall, chosen for its multiple escape routes and distance from their hideout. Eli and Thorn nodded grimly. Thorn fired a salvaged flare gun through a broken skylight. The red streak illuminated the darkening sky like a beacon. The response was almost immediate. The distinctive hum of Krell drones filled the air, growing louder as 3 patrol units converged on their position. Maya watched through binoculars as the sleek, metallic forms approached, their surfaces rippling with an almost fluid-like technology. "Wait for it," she whispered, tracking their movement. "Wait. Now." She flipped the switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then a high-pitched whine emanated from the device, inaudible to human ears, but apparently devastating to the Krell. The drones jerked violently, their graceful flight patterns disintegrating into chaotic spirals. One crashed immediately, smashing through the roof and landing 20 feet from their position. The second spun wildly before colliding with the third, sending both plummeting to the ground outside the building. "It works," Thorn breathed, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. Maya was already moving. "Pack it up. We need to be gone before reinforcements arrive." They retrieved the crashed drone for study and disappeared into the network of service tunnels beneath the mall. By morning, they had returned to their hideout, exhausted but filled with the first real hope since the invasion began. Word spread quietly among survivor communities. Some dismissed it as wishful thinking. The idea that the seemingly invincible Krell had a vulnerability was too good to believe. Others, desperate for anything that might turn the tide, sought out Maya's group. Within 2 months, their original cell of 27 had grown to over 200, operating from an abandoned subway maintenance facility deep beneath the city. Eli, with help from engineers who had joined their ranks, refined the disruptor, making it more powerful, more portable. Maya organized them into teams: scouts, scavengers, fighters, medics, creating structure from chaos. Their first coordinated strike targeted a Krell processing facility on the outskirts of the former city. The aliens had been systematically harvesting Earth's resources, converting everything from metal to organic matter into materials for their ever-expanding occupation infrastructure. The facility was lightly guarded, relying more on automated systems than physical Krell presence. Maya led the operation personally, commanding 3 teams of 5 resistance fighters. Each team carried a miniaturized disruptor, powerful enough to affect a 30-foot radius. Their plan was simple: plant the devices at strategic points around the facility, activate them simultaneously, and observe the effects. "Remember," Maya told them before they moved out, "this is primarily intelligence gathering. We need to know exactly how the Krell respond to a larger disruption. Avoid direct engagement if possible." Under cover of night, they approached the facility, a bizarre structure of twisting metal and pulsing blue energy fields. Team 1, led by Thorn, took position at the northern perimeter. Team 2, under an ex-police officer named Dominic, covered the east. Maya's Team 3 approached from the south, where the facility's power core was located according to their reconnaissance. On Maya's signal, all 3 teams activated their disruptors. The effect was immediate and more dramatic than anyone anticipated. The facility's lights flickered wildly before going dark. The hum of machinery stuttered and died. Most significantly, the Krell guards, 3 7-foot-tall beings with exoskeletons that seemed part organic, part mechanical, collapsed to the ground, their limbs twitching uncontrollably. "This is our chance," Maya realized, abandoning the original plan. "Team 1 and 2, secure the perimeter. My team is going in. We're taking everything we can carry." Inside the darkened facility, Maya's team discovered stockpiles of harvested materials, some recognizable as processed metals and electronics, others utterly alien. Most valuable of all, they found data terminals. Eli, who had insisted on joining Maya's team despite her objections, managed to extract what appeared to be navigational information before the system initiated an emergency purge. Their victory was short-lived. As they prepared to withdraw, the disruptor's effect began to weaken. The facility's backup systems activated, bathing everything in red emergency lighting. The fallen Krell guards started to recover, their movements jerky but coordinated. "Fall back," Maya ordered through their radio network. Immediate withdrawal. They escaped with their stolen intelligence, but not without cost. 2 resistance fighters were caught in a sudden energy discharge as the facility's systems came back online. Another was captured during the retreat, dragged screaming into the building by a partially recovered Krell guard. Back at their base, as medical teams treated the wounded and Eli began analyzing the stolen data, Maya faced hard questions from her leadership council. "We lost people today," Dominic said, his face grim. "Was it worth it?" Eli looked up from his workstation. "It was. The data we recovered, it's a gold mine. Krell ship positions, patrol routes, and most importantly, details about their command structure." He projected a crude map onto the wall. "They operate as a network, all connected to these larger vessels, motherships, essentially. There are 7 of them globally, each controlling a continental region." Maya studied the projection, her strategic mind already formulating possibilities. "So if we could disrupt those ships, we could potentially cripple their entire operation on Earth," Eli confirmed. "But we'd need something much more powerful than our current devices, and we'd need to hit all 7 simultaneously." Thorne, who had been silently listening, spoke up. "How do we coordinate something like that? We can barely communicate across the city, let alone globally." Maya turned to face the assembled resistance leaders, her expression resolute. "We find a way. Because now we know it's possible. The Krell aren't invincible. Earth can fight back." As night fell over the ruins of Chicago, the news spread throughout the bunker. For the first time since the copper sky changed everything, people smiled. They whispered a word that had almost been forgotten. Hope / the global uprising and humanity's triumph. The next 6 months transformed Maya's small resistance cell into the nucleus of a global movement. The information stolen from the Krell facility proved invaluable, particularly the frequencies used by their communication network. Thorne and his team of communication specialists worked tirelessly to adapt salvaged equipment, eventually establishing contact with other resistance groups across North America. "We've got confirmation from groups in Vancouver, Mexico City, and what's left of Atlanta," Thorne reported during a strategy meeting. "They've successfully replicated our disruptor technology and are conducting their own operations." Eli, now leading a research division of 30 engineers and scientists, had made breakthrough after breakthrough. "The Krell are vulnerable because they're too connected," he explained, gesturing to his latest diagrams. "Their strength is also their weakness. Each individual Krell is part of a vast neural network. They don't just communicate, they share consciousness. Disrupt that connection, and they're crippled." Their greatest achievement came 3 months after the processing facility raid, establishing communication with resistance groups in Europe and Asia using modified Krell technology. Through a complex relay system, they could now coordinate globally, passing information between continents for the first time since the invasion. The resistance learned that similar discoveries about Krell vulnerabilities had been made independently in other parts of the world. A group in Japan had developed sophisticated jammers that could mask human heat signatures from Krell sensors. Resistance fighters in Russia had discovered that the aliens avoided certain areas with high natural radiation, suggesting another potential weakness. But the Krell were adapting. Their patrol patterns became more random, their response times quicker. Worst of all, they began systematic extermination campaigns against human settlements, seemingly aware that organized resistance was growing. "They're getting desperate," Maya told her council after reports arrived of a particularly brutal Krell attack on a survivor community in what was once Detroit. "They know we're becoming a threat." The turning point came when contact was established with Dr. Farida Hassan, a brilliant physicist who had survived with a group of university colleagues in an underground research facility in Egypt. Dr. Hassan had been studying Krell technology since the invasion and had developed a theory that would change everything. "The motherships are more than just command centers," she explained during a static-filled transmission. "They're amplifiers. The Krell consciousness is stored and boosted through these vessels. If we could broadcast the disruption frequency directly into all 7 motherships simultaneously, we could potentially sever their entire network." "How would we even get close to one mothership, let alone all 7? Dominic questioned, always the pragmatist. Maya and Eli exchanged glances. They had been developing a plan for weeks, one so audacious that they had hesitated to share it until now. "We don't need to get close to all of them," Maya said. "We just need to infiltrate one. The primary North American mothership is hovering over what used to be Washington, D.C. If we can get a team aboard with an enhanced disruptor and access their communication array, we could broadcast the frequency through their own." The plan materialized over weeks of intensive preparation. While Maya trained an infiltration team, Eli and Dr. Hassan collaborated remotely to design what they called the Pulse, a device capable of generating the disruption field powerful enough to affect an entire mothership. Resistance cells worldwide prepared for coordinated diversionary attacks to draw Krell forces away from their motherships on the appointed day. Security was paramount. They used old-fashioned methods, hand-delivered messages, face-to-face meetings, knowing that the Krell could intercept any electronic communication. The date was set, exactly 1 year after the invasion began. They called it Operation Daybreak. The night before the mission, Maya found Eli still working in his lab, making final adjustments to the Pulse. "You should get some rest," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Eli didn't look up from his work. "Can't sleep anyway. Might as well make sure this thing works properly." "It will." Maya stepped closer, studying the device that represented humanity's best hope. Smaller than she expected, it fit into a backpack, its complex circuitry housed in a metal casing scavenged from Krell technology. "You've tested it thoroughly. Testing it in a controlled environment is one thing. Deploying it inside an alien mothership is something else entirely." Eli finally looked up, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "If I've miscalculated, if the frequency isn't precise, then we adapt," Maya said firmly. "That's what humans do. That's why we're going to win this." Eli managed a tired smile. "When did you become such an optimist?" "When I saw what people could accomplish together, even after losing everything." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Get some sleep, Eli." "That's in order." Operation Daybreak began at dawn. Across the globe, resistance fighters launched simultaneous attacks on Krell outposts and processing facilities. The aliens responded as expected, diverting forces from their motherships to quell the sudden uprising. Maya's infiltration team, herself, Eli, Thorne, and 2 others chosen for their specific skills, approached Washington, D.C. through a network of old storm drains. The city above was unrecognizable, transformed by Krell architecture into something alien and forbidding. The mothership hovered a mere 1,000 feet above what had once been the National Mall, its massive hull blocking out the morning sun. Their entry point was a risk-filled gamble. Krell shuttles regularly transported harvested materials up to the mothership. Using a captured Krell access code obtained during a previous raid, they managed to board an automated cargo shuttle as it prepared for departure. "Everyone remember the layout," Maya whispered as the shuttle ascended. Based on information pieced together from multiple sources, they had created a rough map of the mothership's interior. Their target was the central communication hub, located deep within the vessel. The shuttle docked with a metallic thud. For a terrifying moment, They froze, waiting for alarms to sound. When none came, they emerged cautiously into a vast loading bay. The interior of the mothership was even more alien than expected. Corridors of flowing metal that seemed almost alive, pulsing with blue energy, illuminated by light that had no visible source. Moving through the ship required constant vigilance. Krell drones patrolled regularly, and occasionally they encountered actual Krell, forcing them to hide in maintenance recesses or unused chambers. Eli kept a modified scanner active, monitoring for changes in the energy flows that might indicate they had been detected. 2 hours into the infiltration, they finally reached the central hub, a cavernous space dominated by a pulsating crystalline structure that Eli identified as the main communication array. Krell operators moved around the structure in perfect synchronization, their movements precise and identical, highlighting their shared consciousness. "Now what?" Thorne whispered. "We can't exactly walk in there." Eli consulted his scanner. "We don't need to. This maintenance duct runs directly beneath the array." He pointed to a narrow passage leading downward. "If we can position the pulse there, the disruption field should propagate through the entire system." Their plan was interrupted by a sudden shift in the mothership's energy pattern. The blue illumination turned amber, and a low-frequency hum reverberated through the structure. "They know we're here," Maya realized. "We need to move now." They descended into the maintenance duct, a cramped space barely large enough for a human to navigate. Eli led the way, following the energy signatures that would lead them beneath the array. Above them, they could hear the increased activity of Krell forces initiating search protocols. "This will power it and amplify the signal," he explained, his fingers moving with practiced precision despite the pressure. "Once activated, we'll have maybe 5 minutes before the system tries to compensate. That should be enough time for the signal to propagate through their network to all 7 motherships." As Eli made the final connections, a section of the ceiling panel slid open. A Krell drone descended, its sensor array swiveling toward them. Thorne reacted instantly, activating a personal disruptor. The drone shuddered and fell, but the damage was done. Alarms blared throughout the ship. The amber illumination turned deep red. "How much longer?" Maya asked, drawing her weapon as the sound of approaching Krell echoed from both ends of the maintenance duct. "Done." Eli closed the final circuit. The pulse hummed to life, its display showing a countdown sequence. 4 minutes until full propagation. "Then we hold this position for 4 minutes," Maya said, her voice calm despite the dire circumstances. "Defensive formation. Conserve ammunition." The next 4 minutes were chaos. Krell forces converged from multiple directions, attempting to reach the pulse. The infiltration team fought desperately, using their personal disruptors to maximum effect and conventional weapons when necessary. Thorne was hit by Krell energy fire, his left arm severely burned. One of the other team members fell, overwhelmed by a sudden rush of drones. At the 3-minute mark, something unexpected happened. The pulse's effect began to manifest throughout the mothership. The walls themselves seemed to shudder. The Krell attackers faltered, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated as their shared consciousness began to fragment. "It's working." Eli shouted over the cacophony of alarms and weapons fire. "The signal is propagating faster than I calculated." At 2 minutes, the mothership's systems began to fail. Gravity fluctuated wildly. Sections of the ceiling collapsed. The remaining Krell forces retreated, seemingly confused and disoriented. "We need to get back to the shuttle bay," Maya ordered. "Now." Their retreat was a desperate race through increasingly unstable corridors. The mothership was literally coming apart around them as the pulse's effect rippled through its systems. They'd reached the shuttle bay to find it in chaos, with Krell craft crashing into each other as their pilots lost coordination. They managed to board their cargo shuttle moments before a massive structural collapse blocked the bay. Thorne, despite his injury, took control of the crude navigation system, guiding them away from the failing mothership. As they descended toward the ruins of Washington, D.C., they witnessed a sight none of them had dared hope for. The massive mothership above them was breaking apart, huge sections of its hull fracturing and falling away. All around the horizon, strange lights flickered in the sky, the disruption effect spreading worldwide through the Krell network. Their shuttle systems failed during the final descent, sending them crashing into the Potomac River. They survived, swimming to shore as the world changed around them. The red emergency lighting that had bathed the ruins for a year flickered and died. The omnipresent hum of Krell technology faded to silence. Across the globe, the scene repeated. 7 motherships fell from the sky. Countless Krell craft dropped from the air, their pilots rendered helpless by the severed connection. Krell ground forces collapsed, their shared consciousness shattered. In the days that followed, humanity emerged from hiding to discover that the victory was even more complete than they had dared hope. The pulse hadn't merely disrupted the Krell, it had broken their connection permanently. Those that survived the initial effect were disoriented individuals, no longer part of a greater whole. Some fought on instinctively, but without coordination, they were quickly overwhelmed by human resistance forces. 1 month after Operation Daybreak, leaders from resistance cells worldwide gathered in the ruins of Geneva to discuss humanity's future. Maya, her arm in a sling from injuries sustained during their escape, addressed the assembly. "We won because we remembered what makes us human," she said, her voice carrying across the makeshift chamber. "Not just our adaptability or our determination, though those were crucial. We won because we can be both individuals and part of something larger. We can think for ourselves and still work together toward a common goal." The Krell couldn't understand that paradox. They were either completely individual or completely collective. That was their weakness. Eli, who stood beside her, added his own thoughts. "We've learned so much from their technology. With what we've salvaged, we can rebuild faster and better than before. The future will be neither what we had nor what the Krell tried to impose. It will be something new."